All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Brushfire Mind. We're here tonight to talk about the second half of the Libertarian Debate that just aired on Fox Business News. And before we get started, just a little quick note. We need your help. We need you to be involved. We want you to watch the show. We are absolutely just beside ourselves. We had over 120 views on our show just last week. We're small. We're getting started, but that's a huge step up, a huge milestone for us. So I do want to ask you to like, follow us, subscribe to the channel, and donate to the Patreon account. And those links will be available in the comments below as well after the live show has gone into the recording on YouTube. And we look forward to having you as part of our viewing audience and spending your money on producing valuable content that you will continue to want to fund. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some notes on tonight's Libertarian Debate. Honestly, I got to say the first thing that struck me is I want to say that Gary Johnson is losing me, but I think that ship has sailed. He lost me completely. I thought he had lost me as far as he could lose me last week on the Nazi cakes and, hey, I want to use our government guns to force people to do stuff. What part of liberty is using initiated violent force monopolized by a centralized government system to cause people to take involuntary actions? Because that's the position he took on the issue of religious restoration. Now, I'm not saying that I'm supporting discriminatory laws, but this whole Religious Freedom Restoration Act debacle has been very carefully framed by the enemy, and the framing that the enemy has given it is counterfactual. It's simply wrong. At the end of the day, what's happening with this is it has been framed such that it's been intentionally framed in an incredibly divisive way. Basically, you have to either vote to deny rights to people of certain faiths, mostly the monotheist faiths, the Christians, the Jews, the Muslims, so on and so forth. You're either voting to take rights away from those people, or you're voting to take rights away from homosexuals and transgenders and all of those. It has been the idea of equal protection under the law here has been utterly cast aside. In neither case, if the Religious Freedom Restoration Acts pass or fail, in either case, one party is injured and the other party is rewarded. So they're literally causing America to choose between these two groups. One group gets disenfranchised. Full stop.
The only thing that comes to mind to address that is something that was brought up to me when it came up to the fact that trying to force people to do things against their will and against things they believe in. And I mean, it's a sticky subject if you argue it that way. But as it was put to me in a couple of different places was, what about not serving blacks at the same lunch counter? You know, you can't refuse someone a meal on their color. So why would you be able to refuse someone anything based on a sexual proclivity, based on a religion, based on... At what point do you draw the line? What is it okay to force people to comply to, and what is it not?
Honestly, on that, my answer is simple. If I want to refuse service to anybody, I should absolutely have the right to do that. And that person should go and tell their friends, hey, this guy hates us for this reason or this reason or this reason. Me personally, you know me, I'm a devout capitalist.
You'll take anybody's money, absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm a devout capitalist. I am dedicated to the almighty dollar, and I firmly believe that possession are 9/10 of our commandments. At the end of the day, I'll do business with people. There are some people I prefer not to do business with, not because I'm a racist or a sexist or whatever, but quite simply there are some people who individually are just a pain in the ass, and I don't want you to waste my fucking time. There are certain people out there, and it takes me beginning to attempt to do business with them to make this judgment call. But if you're the sort of person that's going to take me, 5, 6, 10 hours of my time to do the sort of work that with other normal people it takes me a half an hour to do the work, and the money's the same, fuck you. Go to Geico. If you want to ask me 1,000 questions about your car insurance when I've told you, hey, here's the 5 best deals in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and I want you to buy the 3rd most expensive one. I want you to pay a little bit more than the cheapest ones because this product is better, and let me explain why. By the time we get to that conversation, I have given you at least an hour and a half to 2 hours of my working time. If after that you continue to ask me so many questions that you soak up 3 hours of my time, you are stealing money from me. And I do not have to be robbed by someone else's idiocy.
I liked
Way to put that.
I liked Austin Peterson's answer on that last week, where he said they should absolutely have the right to refuse service to whomever they choose, and I'll be the first ones next to my friends up there picketing their business as a result. Because you know what it really does. I mean, yeah, Steve's right. I mean, there's not a limit. Where do you draw the line? You can discriminate over anything, but if you want to put a sign in the front of your business that says we don't serve N-words and we don't serve homos and whatever else, you're asking to have bricks thrown through your window. You're asking to be boycotted. You're probably going to go out of business in 4.5 months. Now, it presents what I said to Caroline earlier when we were talking about this very thing. It's kind of a good assholeometer if you think about it. Like there's what brought the subject up. Caroline is my wife for the viewers. What brought the subject up is a bill, I believe, and it may not be a bill. I may be using the wrong word there. It's in Tennessee. It has to do with psychiatric care or counseling to people in the LGBT community. And the thing that was passed was that you could deny counseling someone in that community. And I'm thinking, counseling is a deeply personal thing. I don't want to go to a counselor who doesn't want me to be there and who's going to just listen to all my problems and then turn around and say, well, if you would try not being gay, maybe some of these things would work themselves out. But I think the root of your problem is your flaming homosexuality. Well, we're not getting anywhere, are we? I mean, it's just it sets up a good assholeometer, and you can look from a distance and say, nope, don't want to do business with them. And enough people will do that with you, where people will get the message, and they won't have signs up there that say we don't serve N-words and homos, and their businesses won't last. I mean, that's capitalism. That's the free market.
And actually, let me first, real quick, Kate, do you have your device oriented in portrait mode? Can you go to landscape?
I can, but last time I did that, it didn't follow me. Did it follow
there you
me?
go.
Sweet. Okay. All right. Let me set up a little bit differently then.
Okay, that's fine. I'll talk so that we don't look at you. So, yeah, let me say this about that also. Allowing businesses to discriminate based on their preference of which customers they want to deal with. Let's say you've got a bar, for example, and they've got the sign up that says no N-words, no homos, and it lists those two, right? So Black Americans and gays and whoever else that business doesn't want to serve, they don't have to go there. They do not have to go and do business with that business. More importantly, well, perhaps more importantly, that business now has a reputation for serving not those people, which also means that they will attract people who don't want to be who don't want to be around other sorts of people. So let's say you've got a bar that is basically catering to white supremacists. Doesn't that mean that those white supremacists that nobody else probably wants to be around aren't in the bars where everybody else wants to drink? So now what you have is a magnet that draws off your other undesirables from you.
That's a good
If
point.
you're gay and you don't want to be around people who hate gay people, and there's a bar or a church or a whatever in your community that actively seeks to serve people who dislike your kind of people, then those people are going to be drawn away from you.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot get rid of people that we disagree with. We could, but nobody's going to let it happen.
No, and that's just not to drag it out much further than that. I don't mean to step on your toes, but that was essentially the only response I could formulate, was the fact that it would take care of itself. And I like the fact that you expanded upon that, saying that yes, the people who put those signs up will be the magnet for the kind of people that feel the same way. And at that point, you've got a roster of everyone in town you don't want to do business with.
Yep.
So if there are other business owners in there, if there are politicians in there, there are ways to deal with that after the fact, too.
Or people whose convictions are not strong enough. Like, you know, just because they open a Starship sex place right down from your house doesn't mean you're going to go. Because you don't want Tom, Dick, and Harry to see you going in there because they're fellow deacons at your Baptist church. So, I mean, what Chris is saying is right. It's going to weed out people. It's going to test people's convictions. And as a result, most likely that the businesses that discriminate are going to be short-lived.
Additionally, let's say you're black and you live in a neighborhood that has a bar that actively refuses to serve blacks, and it serves as a magnet to draw in anti-black racists. Well, if you're a black man in a community that has a bar like that, and that bar fails to go out of business because the people in your community continue to patronize that bar, it's not so much that you don't want to be in the neighborhood that has that bar. It's that you don't want to be in the neighborhood that is filled with those people. That's a great barometer for you to judge, oh, wow, this is not a place that I want to live and raise my children.
Like I said, assholeometer.
Yeah, and then one more point. There are plenty of restaurants, especially restaurants, but all kind of other businesses that have the sign on the door that says no shirt, no shoes, no service. So when you talk about the extreme, you know, if you don't draw the line, if you're going to draw the line, if you're going to make people serve blacks after integration, after desegregation, so we're forcing people to take an action there. If you completely do away with it, if you completely do away with the regulation of it and allow people to discriminate where they would like to, then sure, you might get racists that want to do their business that way, and those are the people that they do business with. But as soon as we start sliding down the slippery slope of forcing people to provide service no matter what, I'm sorry, equal protection under the law. How is being gay different than being? Well, okay, I'll back off the gay one, because for being homosexual, I'm still not entirely convinced one way or the other about nature versus nurture on that one. I think, in my experience, I have known people who I could not reasonably say that they weren't born homosexuals. I have also known people who I could not reasonably believe had not made a choice at some point in their life. So leave that one off. But let's go
Either way, that's not something to be judged for. Even if it was a decision, it doesn't matter. That's
right, but hold on. So let's go with like, for example, transvestites or Nazis. In each of these cases, you can clearly argue that it's a lifestyle choice. So is nudist. So if I cannot refuse service to a homosexual because I don't like gays, does that mean? And I love you guys. I do. I've got some very good friends. I'm speaking hypothetically. I don't need the comments and the bullshit. Just fucking hold on. But if I cannot refuse service to homosexuals or Nazis or whoever because I don't agree with their lifestyle choices, does that mean that I have to tolerate nudists eating in my restaurant, for example?
I think that comes down to a societal measurement of what's acceptable. There have been anti-nudity laws for a long time, which coincidentally, you know, a segment of the population is protesting that why can men go topless and women not, which is a pretty good question in my book. But
I agree. You can't put enough titties in a room.
Yeah, but when you start to grow your own and you ain't supposed to have them, I'm pretty sure I don't want to expose anybody to the nightmare that would be me without.
I'm at 340, I'm at 340 right now, brother. You preaching to the choir.
But at any rate, I do have to admit that there are some limits to everything. There's going to be. Now, the public nudity thing, do you want to be able to do on any city street what you could do on a secluded beach in the middle of nowhere? I don't know. I don't know that I'm all that open to that. There are a lot of people on this earth I don't want to see naked.
Well, Caroline and I, when we were talking about this, she mentioned the fact that a lot of people begin businesses with government loans. And there are also people who, you know, are going to certain banks to get bank loans. And like most of us who are homeowners, we don't really own that home. We're paying installments on that home. So, if
no American owns a home until we repeal all property tax.
Right. Well, that's true, but that's
Do me a favor, pan your camera down. You still look like Wilson from Home Improvement.
I mean, this thing is up as far as it'll go. He demanded I put it in landscape mode, so now I'll just hold it with my hand.
That's better.
Yeah, because I'm holding it with my hand.
Oh.
Anyway.
No, let go of it again.
The point is that.
Well, no, you weren't supposed to fall off.
Nope. Here I am. See what happens when I hold it with my hand? I hit the freaking home key.
Okay, now let go of it. I think you're all right.
No, I'm not touching a thing right now.
Okay,
yeah, you're good.
I don't know.
Sorry, back up. Start over.
Okay. So if you get your loan to start your business from the government, then sure, you should have to follow the government's anti-discriminatory laws. If you get your loan from Bank of America, and Bank of America says, upon signing an agreement with us, you agree that you have to follow our discriminatory laws. I'm good with that. I'm perfectly fine with that. If you start your business with your own money and you put down that money, like if you're, for instance, a handyman, there's not a lot of overhead there. You went out and you bought your tools with your money, most likely. You probably already owned a Ford F-150 or whatever. Then yeah, discriminate all you want to. You built that business. You put your blood, sweat, tears, and money into that business. You should be able to discriminate on anything. If you want to go to someone's house and wear a shirt with a swastika on it, or a Che Guevara thing, but don't get me started on that, then that's fine, whatever. But that there is the point that if you get your money from another institution, you should have to follow their discriminatory guidelines. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a good start. That at least sets some guidelines to work off of at a very minimum. And I think it still leaves it open for you to make or break your own livelihood by the opinions you hold and the way you treat people in general.
Yeah.
I especially like the idea because, I mean, you guys know me. I've got a couple of businesses, and each one of them I opened myself with cash on the barrelhead, never took a loan to open them. I own them outright. So all my operating capital is off of my own revenue stream that's part of the business itself, and where I have licenses for certain things like the insurance thing. I paid for the school and the license out of pocket. I paid to set up the office. It's all my money.
But you represent different.
I love the idea. I love that idea that, hey, I own this. You can't say fuck.
But your products are from other people's companies.
Oh yeah, that's a fair point. And I do, however, have the freedom. I mean, I have dozens of contracts with different insurance companies. I have all the freedom in the world that if I don't like the particular practices of one insurance company, I fire their asses. I'll give you one example. United Healthcare. United Healthcare has a history of huge financial backing to the Democrat Party. And in fairness, all of the health insurance companies and most of the property and casualty companies just about have similar histories, but United's history is especially shady on that. So I have a contract with United, and I will represent United when I have to, but it basically comes down to this. If they happen to be the only insurance company offering a product in an area, which is what I run into out in the sticks, somebody that lives just way out in BF nowhere, all they can buy is United, and so that's what I sell them.
Right. I don't mean to put a damper on that. We've spent a half an hour, give or take, on that when we've got it entitled Libertarian Debates Part 2.
Good point.
That was definitely addressing a question left over from the last one, and I think we touched on some good aspects of it. Move on, maybe get through the debates a little before we get into the long-winded stuff again.
Yeah, you're not. And hey, I'm a little amazed. You're right. I just looked at my watch. You're right. We are right at 22:30. So, damn, son.
Well, we started a little bit late as well. So let's talk about then one of the first topics that came up tonight on the Libertarian Debate, which is immigration, the Libertarian stance on immigration.
I thought it was interesting, and I'm trying to wrap my head around the platform stance, because after a little bit more research, one of our colleagues, John, his whole argument against the libertarian stance, period, is the open borders policy. And from what I've been able to tell, officially that is an end game, would be to have open borders, people come and go as they please, because when you're talking the ultimate and personal freedom, that's it. You can be here or not be here. Either way. I think we've got a long way to go before anything like that even becomes the slightest bit tenable. And simply put, you cannot have a nation that you tout to be about laws. You cannot have a welfare state, and you cannot have open borders, all three together, until something has been reconciled to handle that. I do disagree, as brilliant as the three on the stage tonight have been. I do tend to agree that, yes, the people that come here want to be here. The people that do tend to come here, most of them do tend to want what they want. Like I said, I do believe statistically, whether it's legal or illegal, for the most part, the people that come do the jobs for the money that Americans won't take to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. Up to a point. Don't get me wrong, they don't fill every single niche, but predominantly those are the roofers who are on the tops of these stick buildings in the summertime trying to get a roof on a house. They're the people doing the fruit picking. They're the people doing the planting and things that Americans just don't want to do. It doesn't pay enough.
Okay,
and, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, it's just simply where I was stating, and then also becoming entrepreneurs. How many people do you know that do junk collection and things? How many of them are other than Latin descent? Because most everybody is a maintenance end of so to speak, a multifamily property. A lot of our haul-offs and things, the numbers we had for people to come and collect old water heaters, washers, dryers, just typical trash outs for stuff that had value as scrap, they were Hispanic 100% of the time. So these are people that aren't doing anything. They're working for themselves. They are providing a service that maybe doesn't pay as much as it would have to make it a native-born American interested in it, but it's more than they would make at home. So I do understand there is a service provided by the immigrants, even if they are illegal up to a point. The other side of it, they're illegal for a reason. We have laws. The fact that we would need to revamp the immigration laws to be something more that limits it to the beneficial side and keep the MS-13 numbers and the serial rapists and stuff that are a very small portion of that population out more effectively would be something necessary. The other would be, and I think even Johnson had said, or one of them had said, even if they're here, you still document them. We all have documentation. We have birth certificates to say who we are. We have driver's licenses, photo IDs, whatever. Then you start logging people that way, make them all point out the fact that they're here. And we've already said you can negate the negative impact on a lot of that simply by the consumption tax rather than a straight income tax, because when somebody's not on the books, they're not paying income tax. Where if they're buying from a store, they are taxed on every dollar they're spending there. So I think there are ways around it.
Okay, so for one, absolutely, getting rid of the income tax in general needs to be a major priority for any liberty-minded individual. The income tax itself, the idea of an income tax, is contrary to liberty, to capitalism, and to the founding of this nation. The idea of an income tax, for starters, it's an idea that came out of a bunch of liberal skulls, and Woodrow Wilson, on his deathbed, said that it was one of the greatest mistakes. He felt terrible about having put it in place. At its inception in 1913, the income tax required an amendment to the Constitution to go into place because it was unconstitutional for there to be an income tax. That constitutional amendment addressed the earlier parts of the Constitution, which said that such a tax could not be under the law in the United States. It did not, however, address the Fourth Amendment, which should protect us from a government agency coming into our homes with guns and requiring us to open our books and show them our numbers and our revenues for the year. That is absolutely unconstitutional, and that's an issue that's not adequately discussed. So the abolition of the sales of the income tax and replacing it with a consumption tax, that's a great way to make sure that the money that these workers who are here, that these criminal aliens are paying their freight, because they're not. Now, as to the idea of these criminal aliens and their place in the workforce, the estimates, the estimates are there are 11 million criminal aliens in the United States right now. Not all of those are working. Some of those are stay-at-home moms. Not a lot of them are stay-at-home moms, but some of those are children. I mean, that number is supposed to include the entire.
Right.
And that number is fuzzy because that number is calculated by people who ignore the significance of the 14th Amendment, which says, and is enshrined in the Constitution, the anchor baby is not a fucking thing. There is no birthright citizenship in this country. It says, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And this is something that people forget. When the 14th Amendment was installed, the problem that was being dealt with is we had just freed the slaves who had no citizenship status. We were looking for a way to give citizenship status to freed black and white slaves alike who had come to this country as slaves, or I'm sorry, not who had come to this country as slaves, who were born into slavery in this country, many of whom were second or third generation slaves in this country, and whose connections back to the tribe that would be their homeland, and that's an important distinction, not nation, not continent, not Africa, not location, but the actual tribe to which they would belong. That's why the language is and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. There was no way to return these people to their homeland, and there had to be some function by which they could be given the rights of citizens. However, we also had another problem. We had a large population of immigrants from Mexico and China who, because their governments still retained the responsibility for them as citizens, and in many of their cases the intent was to strike it rich in America and return to their country of origin, where if they had abandoned their citizenship, they would be treated shabbily, if at all. The point to it was that unless when parents have children on U.S. soil, unless those parents are somehow subject to the jurisdiction of the United States law, of the federal government, then that child is not a citizen. So, you show me an immigrant that is an immigrant. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. Immigration is a process under the law. You cannot immigrate without doing it legally. All you can do is invade. You are not an illegal immigrant, you are a criminal alien. You show me an immigrant that has a valid green card, is working a job, is a productive citizen, or a productive person on the path to possible citizenship. Okay, Now we can talk about birthright citizenship for that child. You show me a criminal alien that is working for wages under a table, sending that money back to Mexico, draining it out of our economy, collecting welfare without contributing to that system, and you want me to fund the education and health care of that poverty-stricken child? You're out of your damn mind. Now,
Okay.
as to their position in the workforce itself, the numbers tell us. Let's just go with the 11 million.
Sure.
Whatever.
For the sake of argument, that's close enough.
So if we've got 11 million undocumented workers in this country working jobs, and the left wants to argue a few things. They want to argue that people on welfare aren't lazy; they've just fallen on hard times. I contend that is not the case for a lot of them. Maybe not even the majority of them. Maybe only half. Maybe only a quarter of them. But we've got, 60 million people on the dole right now?
I'm not even sure where that number stands right now.
It's around 60 million that are just straight on welfare. Nearly half of Americans now are receiving some sort of government. Actually, that's not even accurate. That number has to be much, much higher because Obamacare is in the mix now. But ignoring Obamacare, nearly half of Americans are receiving some sort of Social Security, disability, fucking something like that, distinct and separate from government pensions. So let's say only 50 million Americans are not in the labor force right now. 50 million working, able-bodied Americans are not in the labor force. So you're telling me that those people are not on the welfare system because they're lazy and because there just aren't any jobs for them, but they're not working because there aren't any jobs for them to be had. And then out of the other side of your mouth, you're going to tell me that if we were even able to successfully deport 11 million criminal aliens, that we would have a labor market crisis because suddenly there wouldn't be these people here to do that work. I'm sorry. Your math is fucked. That's how you got to be a Democrat. Your math is fucked. If 11 million workers were to suddenly vacate the workforce and the welfare addicts are not lazy and that's not why they're on welfare, if they really want jobs and they just don't have them because there just aren't any jobs for them to have, those two facts cannot be simultaneously true. It cannot be that the welfare addict wants a job and the job doesn't exist. It cannot be simultaneously true that that is the case and that the evacuation of 11 million criminal aliens from the workforce would cause a labor crisis. Those two things can't be true. If you evacuate 11 million people from the workforce and there's a labor crisis, it is because these people don't want to fill those jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, that's
no, that is mathematically, that's a wonderful.
Democrats are what they are because they're bad at math.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing that at all. We've had that discussion before, and there's no one else speaking about it like that. But that absolutely is a dichotomy that should be called out in public in other debates where people are challenged like they were in this one.
Real quick, let me pop back to open border real quick, because we're into this bad boy. We're just driving on through tonight. So on the open borders, the libertarian idea is we should all be free to come and go as we please.
Ultimately,
and that's the ultimate form of liberty.
Mm-hmm.
That is incorrect. I don't disagree. It's not that I disagree with their opinion. Their statement is counterfactual. So here it is. As it stands, Americans are free to leave the country as they see fit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to do so, they must conform to whatever laws there are in the country they're going to. Whatever the requirements are for the visa, for the visiting pass, for passport, whatever it takes, whatever that country wants you to do. But if you want to leave the United States and go to another country, under the law, all you're required to do is go.
Yeah.
You don't even need a passport to leave the country. You need a passport. You need your passport after you've left the country to get back in. and to not be hauled away as an illegal alien once you land in other countries.
Mm-hmm.
So, and under the system that we have currently, you are free to go.
Right.
So that's easy. Now, as far as free to just enter the country, you're crazy. Now you're losing your mind. The absence of a border is the absence of a nation.
Right.
We
and
are
then we
beset.
get the anarchist wing of the Libertarian Party.
Right. We are beset on all sides by socialists.
Mm-hmm.
And, more importantly, terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not accusing Canadians of being terrorists or Mexicans of being terrorists.
They did unleash Bryan Adams on us.
Say again?
The Canadians did unleash Bryan Adams on us.
Well,
Justin Bieber.
but in both of those countries, there is the possibility, and honestly, more so from Canada than from Mexico, because we do more aggressively secure our border against Mexico than we do against Canada. It would be easier to enter the United States through Canada. Thankfully, Muslim terrorists are accustomed to a hot desert and would likely freeze to death, or one could hope. But the inability or the lack of dedication to secure borders against invasion is the end of liberty, because now you have made it such that you cannot retain the power of government to defend its people from tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
The life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, in that order. If you are not alive, you cannot be free. If you are not free, then you cannot pursue happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And when we say happiness here, I definitely tend to think on that in the kind of Aristotelian method of happiness. In the Nicomachean Ethic, Aristotle set up the idea of happiness as something more akin to nirvana, but his argument was that happiness is an end in itself. You ask somebody why they go to work, and they'll say, because I want to get a paycheck, or because I enjoy the work I do. Well, okay, well, why do you want to get a paycheck? Well, so that I can pay the bills, so I can live in a house and have good food. Okay, well, why do you want to eat good food? Well, it's good for my health. Okay, well, why do you want to be healthy? Because I'll be happier if I'm healthy. Okay, you want to be happy. Why do you want to be happy? And answer that question. Why do you want to be happy? And nobody will answer that question, because at the end of the day, when you ask somebody, why do you want to be happy, the answer is, why? How could you not want to be happy? How could I want to not be happy?
Right.
Happiness is the ultimate goodness.
That's not
so the pursuit of happiness.
Well,
the government must be armed to defend liberty, and
right.
The people must be armed to defend themselves against the government should it become destructive to those means.
Agreed. The catch to this is, like I said, this is an end game kind of thing. This is a best case scenario, because everyone has their best case scenario. Republicans do, Democrats do. We don't all agree with that anyhow. The idea of this is, and with checks and balances, and the idea of the Overton window, as you brought up before, is the popular opinion is going to shift. Not often is it going to be to the extremes anyhow. I don't know that you could ever get the idea of dropping all borders past a nation full of people. Especially not when you see what opening the borders has done in so many nations in Europe now, and the flow that they've gotten. They've gotten a bunch of people honestly scared for their lives, and they've got a handful of opportunists that have just made it look like a really, really bad idea.
Yeah, and amusingly, a lot of the European nations have started slamming those borders shut lately.
And they have. And
out of absolute necessity.
A lot. I don't have anything in front of me, but I've been reading the same thing too, and just not notating it, knowing this show would have been about this last debate, or last portion of the debate.
Yeah.
That's why I haven't been concerned for voting Libertarian, because, if I vote Libertarian, all of a sudden the borders will drop. It's not going to happen. That's like saying if I elect Trump, nuclear missiles will be everywhere. It's not going to happen. The hyperbole has got to stop. We've got to stay with the meat of these arguments. We've got to stay with where things go a little bit by little bit. the same way we got to this place.
Well, it was only 20 years ago we were saying if you elect Bill Clinton, we're going to have socialized medicine and all be communists.
Right. And it was allowed to happen because of the obfuscation and everything else that went on, and the fact that who were the people voted for 20 years ago? Democrats and Republicans. If you put people in that honestly do care about the Constitution, there is nothing in the Constitution that says we have to have open borders. It's quite specifically delineated that the national defense is there to protect our borders. Yes?
Yep.
Okay, so tell me what states are going to ratify a repeal of anything that says that we are here to defend our borders. It won't happen. That is an ideal would be one thing. That is an ideal to reform immigration and make it more streamlined for desirable immigrants, I think is a good direction.
Well, Gary Johnson was the governor of a border state.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously that's the case, that Gary Johnson didn't become the governor and all of a sudden all of the walls fell down and he just said, everybody come on. And you're right, the hyperbole has gotten, the hyperbole has become hyperbolic. I mean, it's insane.
Who saw that coming?
Who
saw that coming?
Right. So I talked about this a little bit last episode, and this is one of the things that I said to Chris. What allays my fears a lot when I look at these candidates, and I'm dissatisfied with this, I'm unhappy with this, I would prefer this and a different candidate. It's not that they're going to get there and they're going to just start shoving the liberal agenda that bothers me personally down our throats. And if anything, they are the least dangerous party to be sitting in the seats of power, because they will give that power back. They're limiting themselves. They're giving that power to the states. I mean, if libertarians had been in charge of this country for the past however many election cycles, who knows? I mean, it could be a case where it's like, well, you know what? I don't particularly like the way Georgia is doing this or that. I don't like that Tennessee is disallowing or is allowing discrimination, or I don't like that North Carolina. Well, then move. Move to Nevada. If Nevada's too liberal for you, move to Mississippi. I mean, that's how this country should be. These are 50 sovereign states.
Mm-hmm.
That should be left out. The federal government's job is to govern. That is not an invasive term.
Yes, not to dictate.
Correct. Yeah, and that's one of those things. And Steve, I know this is probably going to bother you, and I know it sounds hypocritical because it's not the way that I started on when you lit the fire that made me really look into this Libertarian Party.
What we do.
And I thank you for it. And you may disagree with me a bit now, and I disagree with myself because it is hypocritical. I was telling Chris this earlier today. I originally started paying attention because I was so unhappy with the candidates we were presented with, because I was tired of voting for a party. I was tired of not voting for a person. I was having to choose between the lesser of two evils. And the most glaring thing was I was voting for Mitt Romney last time. I didn't like Mitt Romney. I was not satisfied in any way with Mitt Romney except that he wasn't Obama, and that my entire vote was against Obama. And I swore I would never do that again. And yet here I am after the two halves of the single libertarian forum in kind of the same spot. As bad as that sounds, I will most likely be voting libertarian this time around because I'm voting against the two parties. Now, the reason I'm comfortable with my current hypocrisy is because I know that a libertarian is not going to be our next president. So what I'm voting for is a change. What I'm voting for is I am pushing for a third option. I'm pushing for liberty. I'm pushing for states' rights, and it is my belief that as it stands right now, other than Austin Peterson, I believe John Mcafee and Gary Johnson would qualify as fiscally conservative liberals, whereas Austin Peterson, I would say, is more of a socially liberal conservative.
Peterson strikes me as a constitutionalist Republican, honestly.
Well, like I said, he's the Liberty Mormon. The more he talked, I can just see dude going around like on his bicycle and going into neighborhoods and knocking on people's doors and saying, "Have you seen the Constitution? No?
In his Gadsden flag underpants.
Have you found Washington?
Have you heard of our Lord and Savior Thomas Jefferson?
Exactly.
I don't know. I think I'm down for that.
Right? I mean, I'm not against that, but I actually really like the guy. But Steve, you pointed out tonight, and one of the analysts pointed out last week. He speaks in a series of bumper stickers, and that's fantastic if you go through with him.
He's a soundbite speaker. He truly is.
Right, but I'm actually really digging Mcafee, and Gary Johnson has really lost me, but he's not lost my vote yet because of
the big game, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I would love to get to the point again where I'm voting for a person, not a party, and where I'm not voting against a party by voting for a person. I really, really want to get there, and I thought I was there this time until I saw them. And I can't say I'm disappointed. I think I got exactly what I expected. But I'm comfortable giving them my vote.
That's honestly a very, very self-aware way of putting that. And it doesn't offend me. It doesn't fly all over me. We all come to this in different ways. It's like I've said before, vote Libertarian. It only feels kinky the first time. But the whole thing being, I think you're right. And I think if you have to have a lesser of any evils, what is wrong with voting for a party who is going to advance liberty, even if it's not as big a step or it's a different step than what you're wanting to do?
Right.
At the very minimum, you're voting for a guy that wants to lower taxes and make it easier for you to start a business. He doesn't want the government involved with how you spend your spare time, and he doesn't want the government stepping in and telling you you're not allowed to protect yourself when you're in bad parts of town they want to pretend don't exist. At that point, any of the three representatives on that stage would be a better president than anyone else in the running from the other two parties, in my opinion.
And gone would be the extremities. That's huge.
Yeah.
The extremes, the defense of the conservatives against the liberal, the defense of the Republicans against the Democrats has been to take a more extreme right stance. And that works exactly the same with liberals. It is exactly the same thing. So we've ended up with these polar opposites. That's all we have to choose from, one extreme or the other. And the Libertarian Party brings it back to liberty, to states' rights, to individuals' rights, even more so than states' rights, which is much more.
And it should be. We should not be dictated how we're supposed to think. The only limits to how we act should be when we start to encroach on the rights of others.
Yes, your liberty stops at my arm's length.
Exactly. And like I said, being offended means absolutely nothing. It just means you don't know how to deal with your emotions.
Mcafee said that great. He nailed it last time.
He did. He did. That's my estimation of him got so much bigger out of these debates rather than the little news snippets and the little sound bites and things that were around before. Agreed. The people who I've still seen things posted on libertarian threads and things on social media that the crazy uncle and all this kind of stuff really haven't watched the debates. They haven't listened to him. They haven't gotten to the meat of what he does. And as easy as it was last time to brush off Austin out of this as the young kid, the soundbite speaker, things like that, there are things to what he's saying, especially the way he brings the Constitution to the forefront, that is kind of refreshing. And I think he did that better than anyone. If you could perfect what was on the stage, if you could take the governing experience of Johnson, the delivery of Mcafee, and the kind of the ideals, so to speak, of Peterson, if you could amalgamate the three of them, I think you've got a good collection there. So keep in mind, whoever that president would be is going to need a vice president. Any combination of the two of them gets us the direction we intend to go, right?
Right.
And the idea being that, like you said, a libertarian's not going to win this time around. I think it would be rather important that the libertarian would. And if the people were honest with themselves and quit voting against Republicans and keeping Democrats in power, or voting against Republicans and keeping Democrats in power, why don't they take a solid look at what they do believe, what the best for everybody is going to be. And if they can't do that, just take for the fact that you want to spend your life telling other people what to do. If that's the case, and you're my friend on Facebook, go away. The idea I have out of all this, if everyone would realize what they are politically and would come together, if everyone saw liberty as being that important, if everybody saw equal opportunity truly being as far advanced as it could be under a liberty party, you no longer need 51, 53% of the vote to become president if there's 3 parties. So it's much more likely to reach, say, 35%, 37% than it would be for the Libertarians to face one of the other parties and have to gain over half.
Right. And the biggest problem with that, though, is these standards. I don't know that there are standards to leftists in this country. And I'm not talking about all liberals, and I'm not talking about all Democrats. I'm talking about leftists. There doesn't seem to be a limit. It's like this person can be Hitler or they can be Gandhi, and as long as they're on the Democratic ticket, they're getting my vote.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while on here. The fact that it doesn't matter what you've done, what you've said, how you've voted, what you've switched in the past. Anything but Republicans makes anything you do okay.
Right.
And
whereas Republicans will conservatives will stay home instead of voting. And as far as the last numbers that I saw, and I mean this is conjecture. I don't know that these numbers are backed up, but conservatives supposedly outnumbered liberals around 2 to 1 in this country, and it was just a matter of the reason we've had Obama for 8 years, the reason we had a Democratic majority the election before last was because they were staying at home. You know, maybe they didn't vote for Romney because he was a Mormon and that bothered them, or you know, various things. But there doesn't seem to be that on the Democratic, which is this. I don't want to get too far off on this subject, but what's so hilarious is Chris and I have talked many times about this melting pot of liberals that have absolutely nothing in common, but they all come together when it comes to voting for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, they have a common enemy.
Right. If they were to go to a coffee house and try to have a conversation, it would last about 2.5 minutes, and they would both leave hating each other, if not death threats being thrown around. But by God, when it comes to electing, they will be standing in line to put Obama back in there, or to put Hillary, or you know, free college Bernie or whatever. By the way, I think this is a pretty good idea. You remember Randy Quaid in Christmas Vacation, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to hire Randy Quaid to just show up at some of these like Bernie and Hillary things, and every time they say something that they can't possibly fulfill, I want him to pop up and go, "Shitter's full."
The shitter's full.
I would pay good money, and apparently, dude needs some work too. So I bet he would be up for it. Like, hey, we'll pay you a criminal alien fee. You know, we'll give you $5 under the table. You just pop up and say that every once in a while.
Start a Patreon. I'd give to that one.
Right. But anyway, I think I've said what I'm going to say, and I will rabbit trail the hell out of the rest of this show if I don't shut up. So.
Oh, we always do. We always do.
Yeah.
Is there any other high points of that anybody wanted to touch on? Because
I was about to ask you that.
We're roughly at an hour. I'm just going to go back over my notes a little bit.
All right. Well, while Steve's looking at his notes.
Oh, the drug policies.
Well, okay, we'll get to that in just a second. We're sitting at 1 hour right now, so while Steve's looking at his notes, I want to address you, the viewer. Hey, we have one viewer. Hey, you. Yeah, you. Hey, do me a favor, viewer. Go ahead and leave a comment on YouTube real quick. Let me know who you are, and if you'd like, we'll pop you into the show and see what you have to say. Let us know how we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you. Okay. And Steve, if you'll take us away on drug policy.
Oh, don't get me started. No, the policies were basically the same out of all of them, from what I gathered. It's essentially your body. You control what you put in it. You're the one that's going to pay for anything that you've done, or you'll be the one that manages it to no harm to anyone, which is most likely what the majority of it would be. I think the only differences that we ran across, it was brought up by Johnson about his back and forth with whoever was it a prime minister from Zurich?
Oh, yeah.
My significant other had come through the house, and once she was home, I missed a part of that because I had to catch up on her day.
Yeah, so Johnson was talking about a program in Zurich, and I'm not familiar with it, and we haven't had time to look it up because, of course, we started this immediately after the debate. But from what Johnson was saying, apparently there's a program in Zurich where they've made heroin available for free to certain people, I guess to addicts for treatment purposes. And all you have to do is register and you have as much heroin as you want to have. And that just, all of a sudden, it sounded to me like, wait a minute, okay, I'm all for decriminalizing everything, but you abso-fucking-lutely do not get to use my tax dollars to pay for somebody's drug use. I'm totally comfortable if people want to use all the fucking drugs they can get their hands on.
Right.
Go for it. But you will pay for your own drugs. I will not pay for your drugs. If you come to my place and try to take my money so that you can pay for your drugs, I will shoot you in your face.
What if it's a stepping stone as ending the drug war, rather than filling up the prisons with single offenders and things like that? The one thing that crossed my mind, and I had stated it in our text thread before, if we all know heroin's popular because it's kind of the cheapest thing on the market right now. And clean needles was one of the things brought up. Zurich made sure that the addicts had clean needles so they didn't all of a sudden have an intravenous drug use ST, bloodborne.
They're not the only ones.
Problem. Say again?
That's all over Switzerland. I was watching an episode of Rick Steves Europe a few months ago, and I forgot where he was, but it wasn't Zurich. And that's what they were doing. It was like getting a condom from the health department. You know, you just walked up. They were like stationed throughout the town. You walked up, they gave you a clean needle. They weren't providing drugs, but they were giving clean needles to keep disease and things like that from spreading and keep from criminalizing drug use. And I'm totally for that. But Chris is correct. I don't want to be paying for. But then again, like you said, you're paying for the people in prison right now.
And that's what I'm thinking. We're paying for people in prison right now. We're subsidizing methadone clinics. We're doing all sorts of things, not to mention bringing the drugs in to bust people to make money for the government and to escape nice fast chase cars and things for the DARE programs. I saw a vehicle in my county today that said donated by a drug dealer. But who knows how much he was actually dealing. I mean, that may have been a guy selling a little bit on the side to his friends that gave up his truck and his livelihood to go to prison so he could get out, not have any work, not have a vehicle, and that saved him from having his life ruined by drugs. So I don't know the far sides of that. The main thing I thought about with the heroin thing, if heroin is our giant monster right now, and I think there's something to legalizing it, taking the mystique away from it. Bring the stuff into the forefront. Let the kids see what happens when you can't control yourself. Teach them about controlling themselves. If it came to the heroin to basically keep people from buying the bathtub stuff and causing major problems, if there was a way to keep a handle on that in a country of 360 million people, I'd be all for it because it's got to be cheaper than putting them all in prison.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm the same way. I don't want to legalize drugs to have to supply a nation with them by any means.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think that was an interesting thing to bring up. It's at least a good talking point, maybe a catalyst for another idea in ending the bullshit drug war.
Mm-hmm.
I do like the clean needles aspect, and there may have been a couple of cities here that tried that simply because of the spread of AIDS and HIV through intravenous drug use back in the day. But I don't know how it would have been funded or how long lived it is.
It would have been voluntary, I'm sure.
I think so.
Did Chris? Did Robin get pulled up on the? I saw Robin Allen pop up.
Yeah, she's in here, but I've got her in the chat here, and she's saying that she can't hear us. Maybe there's some problem with her computer, so she's doing some troubleshooting, and she and I are trying to sort that out over the chat line while you guys are talking.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all keep at. Oh, I heard something. Robin, say hello.
Hello?
Hey, it's working.
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Excellent.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave the main presentation on Steve there since Robin doesn't have video.
And Steve's pretty to look at.
Yeah, Steve's real pretty. So yeah, hey Robin, what's going on? Have you been watching the show up to now, or did you just pop in?
I just popped in. I kind of remembered one of my friends came over and we were trying to decide whether to go see Shakespeare or to go see a hackathon, and I was like, oh shit, it's like 8 o'clock because I'm on Pacific time. I was trying to leave the office. I'm still in the office. So, yeah, some of us have to work for a living. You know, not everyone can afford Bernie Sanders politics.
Yeah, we three tend to work for a living during the day, but of course it's 11:30. No, it's a little after 11 o'clock at night here.
Oh, I have my French friend here with me, Maïté. She's from France.
Hello.
Tu parles français ou pas? No.
No, they don't speak
They don't
French,
speak
I don't
French.
think.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
Oh, poor.
I don't speak Korean. It's
And
hard.
that was it. That was all my French right there. Oh, poor.
What did you say? I couldn't even hear you. What did you say?
I said peu, and that was all my French.
Oh,
That is my peu.
yeah. My Spanish is pathetic. Un poquito español. Sí.
That's all you need to know.
Okay.
Very, very little.
Oh, sí, si quieres hablando en español, yo puedo hacer eso, pero en francés, si vous préférez, no.
Yo entiendo español, pero porque yo necesito practicar. Mi español es mierda. Sí.
yeah, that sounded pretty clear to me.
Yeah, that was very good.
Y mi cabra está en fuego. Where were we?
So what was it, Robin? What was it that sparked you tonight? What made you want to call in and talk to us?
Oh, it was me. Robin loves me, baby.
Yeah, Chris was talking about John Byron having a question about what it means to be Republican and to be a black nationalist kind of at the same time. How a person can be Afrocentric but still be like a libertarian and a Republican.
Mm.
Yeah.
So what do you find? Is it frowned upon? I mean, like a matter of being ostracized?
I think for a lot of people it doesn't really come up most of the time. I tend to kind of tread in a space above politics a lot of the time. But if it comes up, I can be kind of staunch and kind of obstinate in my views to some extent. And if people want to debate, I will debate, but I'll warn them that I'll typically win the debate. Because the problem is that I read too much, and I'm kind of well versed in stuff, so it's kind of hard to refute really logical arguments that are well conceived and well put.
I wish that was a widespread problem.
Yeah, the world would be a much better place if everyone made sure their feet were on the ground before they took a stand.
Yeah.
Robin and I have a special kind of relationship. She and I tried to take a pretty little black chick in Georgia, in a mostly black Democrat district, and make her and run her for an office as a Republican. It was quite an adventure.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yeah, that was something else. Yeah.
The sad thing out of that it just shows is the fact that any color that way or any religion or anything should denote you as a member of a party on either side anyway. If it's come down to that's what we're arguing with, and because you are A, you have to be B,
Yeah.
I think that shows how broken the system is. If it's onto your color at that point or anything else instead of where you are on issues, we've probably lost the battle.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just I was talking to someone about this the other day, because they were saying, well, they were asking me questions, and I was kind of explaining that at the end of the day, even though we pretend like we have all these complex politics between black and white in the United States, the truth is that we share a common culture. Most white people in the country understand Ebonics. All black people understand Standard English. We all listen to rock. We all listen to the blues and jazz. And we all want to fucking have, food and listen to music and spend the night away with our loved ones while you're underneath some sheets in the moonlight. And we all have the same kind of way of doing that. And we'll say, well, this is the black way, this is the white way, but it's the American way, and it's a mixture of both. And I think one thing that all Americans have in common, sadly enough, is this lack of inclination to being educated about the political process, the origins of our political structure, the way that it works, this whole idea of the Constitution and the rule of law, and and the ongoing interpretation of what the American experiment is all about. And I think that's like the really big issue that we face today, is that we have these partisan populist politics that appeal to the lowest common denominator, and people forget that a large part of the experience involves an informed citizenry that's coming to the table, not just with a viewpoint and some kind of stand, but with an educated perspective that takes into account the plurality of the nature of the experiment that we're trying to do in this country. And if people were more informed, yeah, we could still disagree, but you wouldn't have these extremes on both sides. People are not going to hear each other, and nothing's ever going to get fucking done. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and thank you for stating it as well as you did. That was wonderful.
Agreed.
The one thing that becomes a part of that, and I kind of got lost in your speech and lost my idea there. It'll come back in a minute. I see Chris is approaching. Chris, your take on Robin's viewpoint?
That's a piece of conversation that we've had a couple of times. As far as the informed citizenry, that's absolutely that's why we do this show. That's what the Brushfire Mind is all about. It is not currently, it is not currently a majority, but rather a tireless and irate minority, setting brush fires of liberty in the minds of men. And that is one of the problems we have in America, is that it is not the majority that is informed. It is not the majority that is well educated. It is not the majority that is well read. Your average American is not going to be able to tell you what the last book they read was. Most people just don't fucking read, which I can't even imagine. I mean, oh my God. What would I do if I could not escape into some Jules Verne or some fucking Wittgenstein or some Heinlein or...
That's what's up. Verne is the man. Yeah.
What's that?
I said Jules Verne is the man.
Fuck yeah. Hey,
This is my next one, Chris.
Oh God, yeah.
This will be my first foray into Hemingway. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I hate to disappoint. The last book I read was the Prince Lestat and the Vampire Chronicles, and I followed that up with a book called The Go-Giver about how you can receive more gifts by giving to people, so that they will reciprocate the arrangement, purely in a business context, though. Not like a kind of altruistic sort of giving. That would be against my Ayn Rand philosophy. But
Didn't have you pegged as an objectivist, Robin.
Oh yeah, very much so. I'm more of an objectivist than I am a libertarian.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I will say that, and I am. Well, the last time I talked to you, Chris, I think I was like between 700 and 800 pages into Atlas Shrugged. So I haven't finished it yet.
2/3 of the week.
It's taken forever, but I've got about 7 or 8 books going on right now, but I am not starting Hemingway until I finish Atlas Shrugged, and I love it. I don't know how I can put it down, but I do. Anyway, I will say this: the great thing about these last 2 shows that we've had, and I think it'll have an effect on a lot of the shows going forward, because if nothing else, the Libertarian Party sneaking up and saying, "Hey, we were 1% last time, and now we're 11%." And where was it? Wisconsin. The great thing about it is it has us speaking in those Austin Peterson 1776 bumper stickers. It's got us talking about liberty again. It's got us talking about America. It's got us talking about what Robin was just saying about this experiment. And those were fantastic words. And that's exact. I mean, these are if nothing else, that is what the Libertarian Party has given us in the last election and this one, is it's got our minds focused on what the United States of America is supposed to be and the role that the federal government of the United States of America is supposed to play versus the individual liberties versus the states' rights. These are very important issues, and I love the fact that at least this is snowballed into talking about the days when powdered wigs were in, and we talked about things like freedom and liberty. And okay, it wasn't totally that way for everybody, and it sounds great on paper, but we still had slaves at the time. But the point is that if we adopted what the founding fathers intended for us to adopt and apply, and we adopted them with today's moral and ethical standards that we're supposed to have evolved to, we would be in that utopia that they were trying to push. And I love that it's gotten us on this course, if nothing else.
You mentioned slavery, and that's always big. Everybody gets buzzed on slavery. Let me tag that real quick. I've been gadflying some fucking college professors lately, asking questions like, okay, we're studying ancient Greek and Roman philosophers who lived in a world where slavery was just par for the course, but then developed democracies where bread and circus was the tool, welfare state. Bread and circus was the tool by which you disincentivized the population from insurgency and rebellion. Let me ask this question. What is the difference between a state with slaves, or what is the difference between slaves and welfare addicts, other than the lack of productivity from one of those groups? How is a slave different from a welfare addict, other than being more productive?
Perspective.
Nope.
Well, I can answer that.
I thought you might.
It should be fun. Okay. One thing I want to highlight. That Chris was really right on that. Back then slavery was par for the course. But a lot of people don't realize the new form of slavery that we had in the New World, chattel slavery, hadn't existed before. So before, if you were in Babylonia or Kemet, what we call Egypt, or Phoenicia or some shit like that, and you were a slave, you could always buy your way out of slavery, work your way back up, so on and so forth. You weren't frozen into it. So when we talk about chattel slavery, that's one thing we take into account. This whole idea that people as a class are locked into it forever was a new concept that was quite revolutionary. So the difference between a chattel slave and a welfare state individual is that the welfare state individual, like Mike Tages mentioned, has willingly subjected themselves to a condition of hopelessness and helplessness. It's a willful helplessness. Whereas if a person is born into chattel slavery, they have a very, very slim margin of a chance of being able to find some way to wrangle themselves free from that. Whereas the people who have voluntarily enrolled in what Lyndon Baines Johnson would have called the Great Society have voluntarily ceded their freedom, which is what Malcolm X would have called the right to self-determination, to, what Chris mentioned again, that whole bread and circus aspect. You feed the people, you entertain the people, you control the people. I actually made a chart today, and I was showing them how Hitler and Malcolm X were actually two sides of the same coin. they weren't necessarily different struggles. People, politically, people didn't like both of them for different reasons, but they used a lot of the same tools. They were well educated. They were versed in the culture of what it meant to be cool. They had their finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist, for lack of a better word, and they were really, really good at understanding not just the dictionary definitions of words, but what people were using as a colloquial language at the time, and being able to touch hearts in a way that really, really got people not just feeling something, but compelled to actually act on those feelings. Whereas, when you talk about the welfare state today, all it is, again, and Chris hit on this, you're feeding the people, you're entertaining them, and now they're complacent. And because they value comfort more than they value struggle, they voluntary. Thank you. It's like Mary Kay said, it's voluntary servitude. They're voluntarily subjecting themselves to a condition in which, like, let's say the government became all fucked up and crazy. There's nothing they could do about it because they don't know how to run a fucking government. They don't have any guns or whatever to protect themselves. And if they did have any guns, they wouldn't be able to organize themselves in a fashion in which to be able to, counteract the apparatus of a state that at the very minimum has a bureaucracy that has entrenched behaviors. And so yeah, the welfare state is what Ayn Rand would call the abnegation of the responsibility of the duty to sustain one's own life. And doing that, you lose your freedom. And I don't think Hitler, or Malcolm X, or George Washington, or anybody else would be like that's American. You get what I'm saying? That's not what anyone anywhere stands for. If they value life and they value freedom and they, and even if you want to take it to the gay marriage thing, you have, gay people, all they want to do is get a law degree, fuck their partner under the sheets, and lock the little door and sit down and, and have a meal and drink wine together. But they got the fucking law degree. They want to go to school or whatever and be productive, and that's fine. But when you have, like, these motherfuckers and they think that, oh, well, I'm just going to sit around, chill, and then after I've drank my 45 million liters of free Pepsi, the state's going to take care of my dialysis, and then they're going to replace my kidney for free. Of course, it's not free. Someone else has to pay for it. Not only have you abnegated your responsibility to, support your own life, you become an extreme drain on the very few people who remain productive. And and I think people expect, I think they would expect in their minds that somehow the pace of innovation would keep at that same pace when you disincentivize people who normally would reap rewards for their creative effort. And now they have to take care of, let's say you have one productive person to every 12 moochers. What will happen to society as a whole when, that pace of innovation slows down? And now, the MRSA bacteria strains can't be killed by any medication, because the last one we invented was invented 20 years ago, and all the bacteria mutated, and now we're all going to have bubonic plague all over again. And I don't think people think about it to those ends, but that's literally the cost of it. The cool thing, and I tell people even like this, if John Bynes is listening, I understand that capitalism has a lot of faults, and I won't, say that it doesn't. But one thing that we have in this, and I think Chris hit on this again too, when he talked about past values versus present values. Back in the day, capitalism and economics meant we were looking at the wealth of nation as a store of gold and silver that a country had. But we learned that mercantilism wasn't exactly the truth, and that's what led abroad to go get some gold and silver from Africa or wherever they got it from. And then we figured out, oh, well, it's GDP, productivity. So yeah, if you have a slave, yeah, they'll be productive, but they won't be as productive as a happy person, who has decided this is the path I want to take. So they figured out that it's actually cheaper not to have people be slaves. It's actually, everyone can live better, including the former slave masters, if you actually had these people living elsewhere and they were supporting themselves, and they could have some freedom to determine their job placements. And when we realized, even, and don't get me wrong, I'm still a staunch libertarian, but even the gold standard is mistaken, because, and the only reason why is that the supply of gold and precious metals can never, that continuous output on a year-to-year basis during a period of time will never exactly match the productivity of a nation during that same period. That's where we get inflation and deflation from, because there's a mismatch between the money supply and the productivity of people within a certain locality. And you know, and again, that kind of goes back to that whole idea of what it means to be free, what it means to live in a free society, what are those trade-offs. But it also, you know, when you think about that in the context of slavery, it's like, well, as we move along and we get better understanding, we do get better. You know, it's not just a nice, feel-good sentiment to free some fucking slaves. It's actually productive in one's self-interest to do it. You know, you don't need to sit there and say, oh, well, I'm a goody two-shoes, angel, whatever. I mean, people literally went around making the case, like, hey, if you move these people off the land, let them rent from you, and then let them work with the chance of having something that they might be able to save up, even if it's just a little bit. Just some people would be ambitious enough to try to attempt to do it. And there was a guy, people won't know his name, but if you Google him, you can find him, A.G. Gaston, Gaston. He's the guy who bankrolled the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that Martin Luther King was with. He started, he was working in the coal mines and railroads, and he started selling burial insurance policies to co-workers. And by the time he died in 1992 and 1993, he had a massive fortune of $150 million in Alabama. I want you to contemplate this shit for a second. $150 fucking million in Alabama, a black dude who was, you know, they all started in the same place. I'm in the coal mine, you're in the coal mine. Give me $5 a week. If you drop dead next week, and you know how black people are, they want a decent burial, they have all of these little rituals they want to do. He identified a need, a want, matched it up, and he was able to, you know, have that success on such a level where not only did he become rich and powerful, to the point where the white people didn't even burn his buildings during the Birmingham riots, he was able to bankroll the very thing that so many people credit with having changed the lives of so many black people, and that was a direct result of that capitalist work ethic. You get what I'm saying? And that's when I talk about informed citizenry. I mean the education that you may not necessarily get in the college. You know, that willingness to go out there and to find those obscure fucking books that when you realize, yo, this isn't some special secret, you know, fake history. This is regular history that people aren't really acknowledging. You know, it's a thing that you realize that when you become educated and you become, I dare say, enlightened to a certain extent, and then you not just have that knowledge and that wisdom and a feeling, but you're willing to act upon it and throw your life force behind that understanding, not only can you be free and can you expand your world, you can expand the world for other people as well. You know, so the wealth of everything that's been created in this country by black people, white people, immigrants, or whoever, is a direct result of that whole idea of self-determination. And you know, and so I'm answering all these questions at the same time. How can you be a black nationalist and be a libertarian? And what does it mean to be a slave versus being a welfare state recipient? It means that you sacrifice the possibility to realize your wildest dreams on Earth today, and you abnegate responsibility for your life. So now you have to depend upon someone in the clouds, or some politician in Washington, or you know, some, I don't know, specter of the ghost of the ancestors to come and save you, whereas you, the whole time, you could have saved yourself and made your life better, not conceptually, not figuratively, but for real today. And you sacrifice, you know, what could have been something fantastic. And yeah, I think that, you know, by not being informed and not having developed ourselves, you know, not just as libertarians or Republicans, but as Americans, you know, like if socialists and other people who are on the other side of the political spectrum really took the time to research the history of all these things, they might think up some kind of version of socialism or even communism that could reconcile with the capitalist structure, but we don't have enough people engaged in experiments and living to even say, oh, well, we found a new way, because they're not willing to innovate. And it doesn't matter whether or not I agree with them, it just matters that there's not that debate going on because people are not informed enough and they're not engaging in the experimental process, which is central to libertarian thought, experiments and living. You do shit this way, if it works out and if it doesn't work out, we're all looking and say, I like that result and I don't like that result. There are no experiments. All we know is when Russia fucked up and Cuba's fucked up and, you know, all these other countries fucked up, and the only countries that have anything are the capitalist countries. And because we don't have enough information from enough people putting input, you know, the best thing that we have right now is what is. And if people were less prone to engage in voluntary servitude and to restrict their own freedom, we might have a country in which, you know, like I think Rodemeyer was saying that we could actually truly have the utopia that people talk about. And yeah, so I run my mouth. That's what I think.
Well, you hit on it when you talked about capitalism. It made me think that we've already gone so far in the other direction because capitalism has been vilified. Success has been vilified. It's been greed just has to be the determining factor for someone to have the type of motivation that makes them successful. And society has gone so far. Well, I don't know if society has. At least it's represented to us that way because the media runs our perception of things. We've gone so far away from that it goes back to one of the first things we were talking about, which is kind of being made to feel like almost like you're betraying someone by not being a Democrat or a liberal because you obviously don't care about people and you don't care about others. And Chris and I have talked about this a lot. I'll stop talking because that is a whole series of episodes. It is a whole series of Brushfire Mind episodes if we were to start attacking just why capitalism is not evil, and as Chris has contended many times, that greed is actually healthy. And Robin, you would have a lot to say on that, being well versed in Ayn Rand as well. But the funny thing is, Atlas Shrugged was written in the late 40s, early 50s.
57.
Oh, okay, so mid to late 50s. So she probably started in the early 50s, and we have already reached some of the stuff that she would have considered extreme in her predictions of where we would be. Well, she may not have considered it that, but other people would have. We've already reached those points. And
well, you know, actually, you were right. It was she took 10 years to write it. She finished it in 57. So yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and she successfully predicted the mindset of 2016 and for about the last 25, 30 years.
Well, I think one thing that's kind of promising is that right up there next to the Bible, the most checked out book from the Library of Congress is Atlas Shrugged.
Oh, good.
And so people making the laws, even who are Democrats, they definitely understand that the profit motive really is the underpinning of society. And on some level, the establishment understands that it is about the economy. All this other shit about gay marriage and abortion is completely fucking unimportant if everybody's starving to death. We take care of the basic needs first. And then, once we have enough to eat, you can debate all this other shit.
Your concept just blew my mind. Wow. You mean to say that if we take care of the things that matter, this other stuff, I'm about to just Lewis Black this thing, like, it's going to work itself out?
Well, I think, you know, one of the cool things about this country is state sovereignty. A lot of people forget about this. And I explain to you, I'll put it very starkly. I'm African.
By a lot of people, do you mean the entire fucking country?
You know, as an African American, there are certain states that I would not go to even today. Like, say, Mississippi, that's not a place that's on my list of places to go. And people in Mississippi have a very specific way of doing things and living, and I think that's fine. I'm a big proponent of voluntarism. I go to places where I'm wanted, and I go to places where I'm appreciated. And if I'm not appreciated there, I'm not trying to force myself on motherfuckers that don't want me in place. I'll go to where I'm appreciated and where I can get some goods and services traded, and hopefully mutual enrichment. And that's the cool thing about the United States, is that because the states can't be abolished, and the states are sovereign themselves, and they see the leftover powers of the federal government, you can have a patchwork quilt of different mini experiments within the larger American experiment. Which if you're like a gay programmer in San Francisco, and live that life and be fine, or like say you don't like programming but you like the arts and you like fashion, you can go to New York or LA and live there. But if you're if you're a conservative white male who believes in certain values, you can go to Virginia, and I mean real Virginia, not North Virginia, and live a restive, peaceful, relatively prosperous, nice life, and not have to look at too many motherfuckers who are darker than you. And I think that's fine. I think that's perfectly fine. Not everyone has to be a multiculturalist or anything like that. And the people that do have their locales that they can go to. And I think that's perfectly fine. Chris made a joke, everybody's a little bit racist, but it's true. And at the same time, like say if I am watching some interracial couple that's black and white, and in the back of my mind I'm like, oh, well, yeah, maybe this person took someone that another black person could have dated, but goddamn, he did pick the right one. Good for him. You get what I'm saying? Who's gonna argue with that? And if they had done it by mutual choice, what's the harm in it? I mean, libertarianism, again, is about the experiments in living. And if people can't have certain states where they're doing one thing that's different from another state, then what's the point of it anyway, if the federal government's going to shove all these things down our throats? You'll have these oases of, hopefully, social liberties and economic liberties. And then you'll have these other oases of traditional values, and you'll go somewhere else and you'll have an oasis where, people are conducting little socialist experiments, and then you can go somewhere where it's just completely Republican and socially conservative. And, and the only thing that would be lacking, probably with today's people, because we want to shove our views on everybody else's throats, I don't think people would be so willing to let people move around and find the places where they want to be. Because like somebody said before, it's about the mindset, not about the way someone looks. And so if you have a certain mindset, you should be free to move. Even if you're a kid, like, listen, I'm gay, buy me a ticket to San Francisco. You get what I'm saying? It's, you don't have to send them to a re-education camp. Send the motherfucker to San Francisco or to LA or something. And if, if they're growing up in San Francisco and they're conservative and they don't feel okay, you buy them a ticket to Virginia or to Mississippi or to Wichita. I lived in Wichita. It wasn't so bad. It was different from New York, but it wasn't bad. And every place has its ups and its downs. I go to different places. There are things I don't like about everywhere I go. But it's completely fine to have different experiments in different localities within our larger American experiment. And I think people forget that states' rights are sacrosanct, and they're sacrosanct for a reason. Like with the North Carolina thing, and I think the transgender bathroom situations, I don't really go to North Carolina very often, so I don't know much about it. But I did attend a Libertarian conference in North Carolina, sponsored by some very nice friends of mine who I won't name. But yeah, the little bit I did see, it was fine, but I was only passing through. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with people having different ways of living, as long as we're not trying to force everybody else to be like us. If Virginia wants to be Virginia, fine. If New York wants to be New York, fine. If Kansas wants to be Kansas, or Louisiana wants to be Louisiana, then we should be content to let people have what it is they want, and then have the freedom of movement within the borders, so that Chris could be happy that there aren't people invading the land. And yeah, you know, for the people in here, you know, I mean, you know, let's really try to get it right. But yeah, I rambled
Don't,
on.
don't, don't mistake me on this one, Robin. I don't mind. I don't mind criminal aliens aggressively invading our country. You know, just as long as I'm allowed to shoot them.
Oh Lord.
I, I haven't killed anybody in 5 years. This month, actually, it's been 5 years since I killed anybody. I think that's. Do I get a coin like an AA?
Well, I'll thank you again for your service to our country.
Aircraft Anonymous.
Guys, I gotta get out of here now. But it's been a pleasure.
All right.
Robin,
Well,
it was a pleasure.
Deuces,
meeting
brother,
you.
and witness.
What is that? Is that the V8 symbol from?
Yeah. Witness.
Glad you were here, Cade. Thanks for joining us again.
Bye, guys.
Yeah, love you, brother. We'll see you next time.
Robin, I just want to say, I almost lost my shit right at the beginning when you named 3 different areas of the Middle East by their ancient names and followed it with, and shit like that.
Yeah, I tend to be kind of casual. A lot of people, they do comment on it that I can be very casual and very erudite at the same time.
I dig it.
You know, I'm not really highfalutin or anything, you know. And I mean, Chris can tell you. I remember one time I think we were in the country club. What was it? The Commerce Club.
Up on the 42nd floor.
Yeah, in some tower somewhere, and people were like,
that fucking place. They
yeah.
bacon.
They're like, you know, and they were just so subservient and stuff, and I'm like, listen, just call me Robin. But Chris was kind of teasing. He was like, it's nice, isn't it, to have people serve you hand and foot. But yeah, if you met me on the street, you wouldn't even necessarily know, you know, that I have that kind of stuff going on in my life because, again, people may not necessarily be equal or have an equal contribution, but I do believe all people have the same intrinsic worth, and I treat them as such, even if I don't agree with them and I think they're complete fucking idiots or degenerates or whatever. It's not my right to judge people.
They're just folks that haven't learned their opinions yet.
Hey, I've shot people politely. It happens.
Well, Winston Churchill said just because you have to kill a man doesn't mean that you can't be polite.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I actually do believe in that. I believe I can be a mortal enemy to someone and still be decent. I can send them back home and give them an honorable burial after I've handled my business.
And to respect, the moment you fail to respect your enemy, you are dead.
Yeah. Pride comes before the fall. That's certainly true. Yeah.
All right, you two keep jabbering for a minute. I'm going to go grab a little more Java in this big old mug.
Actually, I think I've just about burned my caffeine intake out.
Well, fortunately, I don't drink a lot of caffeine, so this is all...
I typically don't either, but I haven't taken my meds in a week, so I had to have some sort of...
Yeah, I've been surviving on fruit snacks today, and I violated my little thing, and because I've been working out so much and I don't know where to get the protein from all the time, I actually had a little turkey jerky thing.
Yeah.
And I've said that Maite probably won't sleep with me for like the next 6 months.
What are you talking about? I'm going to France.
Yeah, she's going to France, so she won't be anywhere around. But like, yeah, it's all very interesting. But yeah, I don't drink coffee or tea.
That's good for you.
I do drink tea sometimes, but not very often. Typically, I feel like if I'm sleepy, I should go to sleep. And if I need more energy, I should find some foods that provide calories kind of immediately.
Yeah, understood.
You ate turkey?
Oh my God, I don't need this Maite right now. Please don't persecute me because I had some meat.
I'm not going to persecute you.
So I guess in the interest of keeping this, since we are still running live, keeping this something someone might bite on, I know we talked about Rand and a couple of things. One thing that keeps coming up whenever her writings are talked about are the leftist side of things, where about the hypocrite she was and blah blah, because at the end of her life she wound up penniless and on welfare and surviving on the government dole that she said people should basically die rather than do. What's your take on that? Because you've got to have an interesting way to look at that.
You know, to be honest, I really don't have a way of looking at it at all. And you know what I will say, I'll say this. I went to a school called Babson College, and of course, out of all the Americans there, be they black or white, I was the only person who I ever saw at the archives of Babson College trying to understand the history of the institution that was shaping my fucking future, right?
Ah.
So I would talk to the archivist, and you know, he would break down all the cool history of Babson College, and what I learned was that Roger Babson made a fortune predicting the Great Depression, and then he later ran for the presidency of the United States under the Prohibition Party, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reason he started Babson College was so that the children of the elite and their families could learn to manage their own monetary affairs. What was happening was that people like Roger Babson, and Babson himself got fired from the investment bank he worked for trading in the interests of the client as opposed to the interests of the firm. So he wanted to make a college that would allow people to learn how to run their own businesses and protect their own wealth. And a lot of people what they don't get about entrepreneurship, now that it's in style and it's a fucking trend, is that it's just as hard. I mean, well, no, not just as hard. It's probably 10 times harder to actually keep wealth than it is to make it.
Absolutely.
And even more difficult is the process of learning how to effectively, efficiently, and to properly engage in philanthropy. Not under some obligation, but you know, saying like Andrew Carnegie, God damn it, there should be public libraries, and making that shit happen.
Right.
That's a great legacy to have, right?
Absolutely.
But in order to do it, you have to apply the same know-how that you learned in the process of making money. And before you can be able to do this philanthropy stuff, you have to be able to maintain the money. And so I would say that, well, you know, her crisis was that she probably didn't have a good investment advisor. And so that whole argument, well, oh, well, she blah, 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 is kind of irrelevant because, you know, she was kind of living in a world at the time where that expertise in the markets, because you remember we were still on the gold standard before 1971. And so the economics that people were looking at were a little different. They didn't understand what we understand today. And I dare say that our understanding of economics and the markets today is imperfect, and we'll learn something probably within the next 10 years that will bring us even closer to what we think is the truth.
Oh, we'd have to imagine you're right, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair take on it. Simply, I don't understand how something like that could invalidate everything she had to say, but some people play it like that.
Well, you know, again, people are generally very uneducated and very prejudiced in their ignorance.
That's true.
And when they come with stuff like that, you know, everything has to be put in context. Like I met this, oh, okay, so this is one of my great favorites. I met this hot-ass French chick named Miriam, and they said, oh, like Mary. Like, you know, no, she was like Miriam, the original name of the mother of Jesus, because when Jesus referred to his mother, he said Miriam, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so people were like, oh, but it's just Mary, and it's like, no, Mary is an English name that is a cognate of the name Miriam, and it's the same way with people. You know, I had an argument with one girl one time, and she said, oh yeah, you know, I climbed the Himalayas. And I was like, you know, in English, we say the Himalayas. And she said, well, you know, Robin, the Himalayas are in India. And I was like, you know, that's a great fucking point. That's
That's great. It's not a quesadilla just because you're a lazy language learner.
Yeah.
The object is called a quesadilla.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
fine. I'll order the Polo Ranchero instead.
I actually, when I was about 17 or 18, I was waiting tables at a Ruby Tuesdays, I think. I was never well suited to waiting tables. I threatened to stab one customer. I mean, but I had a customer ask me if he could have some quesadillas, and I said, sure. You want some jalapenos on that, you illiterate twat?
You want to input something to this conversation?
What? No, I was going to repeat that.
Okay, go use the bathroom. Steve disappeared.
I think he went to pee out of his back door. He's gonna go piss in the yard. It's more convenient.
You're still alive, you dumbass.
But yeah, those people who criticize it for that, they just lack contextual reference points, and they really haven't thought it through enough. And that's one thing I really learned at those training camps that I went to, was how to contextualize stuff and really understand the larger picture. You know, we live in a really, really multifaceted world that's quite fascinating when you start to explore it. And again, you don't have to agree with stuff you see in order to be fascinated by it. But it is quite fascinating to explore the varieties of modes of living that exist on this little planet that we live on. It's, you know, I mean, it's really cool, you know, for us to be on such a small planet around such a small star, and for the whole world to still be so fucking vast. It, you know, I think it's wonderful. We could only stop trying to make everybody else think like us. You know, I think people in general would be okay. This is the problem with these people, ISIS or whatever. It's like, oh, well, you know, we're going to go and we're going to annex all these regions and force them to think like us. And then if you say anything against it, or you try to counteract it, or you criticize it, they're going to send suicide bombers halfway across the world to terrorize you into silence until we're at the point where we can annex your shit. And it's like, well, wait, hold up, like, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, and like, you know, and again, going back to the race thing, what the hell does race matter when they're trying to kill us all? You know, how are we going to be caught up in race politics and gay and straight politics when there are people who want to kill all of us? Every single one. Republican, Democrat, Communist, Socialist, Black, White, Chinese, Laotian, Cambodian, or whatever. And we're sitting here debating, oh, well, you know, the bathroom issue. The bathroom won't fucking be there after the suicide bomber gets there. You get what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It, you know, I mean, take care of basic things.
I'm a little fuzzy on the whole bathroom issue. For what it feels like to me when I look at Facebook or the news or anything and I hear about the bathroom issue, you know what I hear? I hear, well, we won the gay marriage question, so here, we found something else to just fucking beat you over the face with. Because it seems to me, if you are transgender, if you used to be one thing and now you're another thing, and you wear the clothes of, you have wrapped yourself in the trappings and affectations of the gender opposite your birth gender, and you want to use the bathroom, unless you're walking in there and saying, hey, everybody, I used to be a man, just saying.
Yeah, you're going to fucking difference.
Who gives a shit? Unless you're going in there and making an announcement, who even knows? Like, I have the same problem with the whole question on gay rights as far as whether or not a homosexual can be refused service in a restaurant. You know, unless you make an announcement or just going out of your way, who gives a shit? I mean, yeah, there are some gay men that okay. In fairness, there's quite a few gay men who take on that affectation, that effeminate thing. They exude a personality.
They magnify it, yeah.
Tells people that they're gay. Okay, I see that a little bit, but even still, who gives a shit? I mean, if you walk into my fucking Subway and order a sandwich, you're not asking to fuck me in the ass. I'm happy to sell you a sandwich. That's good. That's fine. I mean, come on. That shit doesn't have to be complicated. Now let me hop back real quick over to Ayn Rand and her dying penniless and a pauper. Let's just keep in mind that most of the people that are going to bring that up and try and use that as an argument, for starters, it's a straw man fucking bullshit position to begin with, and they're doing it because they're shitbag liberals who think they've suddenly got a fucking gotcha that can shut down your position on objectivism. And you can just look at them and say, okay, let's talk about Karl Marx. Because if I remember correctly, Ayn Rand didn't starve any of her children to death because of her alcoholism. So, if that's your fucking position, Karl Marx murdered one of his children in dedication to his fucking philosophy.
Yeah.
So that's a non-starter.
Yeah, I would think so too. I just, being that we had a professed objectivist other than yourself in the room too, I figured that was worth bringing up just because I hadn't heard that addressed out loud before.
Yeah, I just, again, it's all about context. It's kind of like, I was explaining why it's so important to read contracts very, very closely, especially when you have an adversarial relationship. A lot of times, when you're dealing with unknown counterparties, what you'll get is 8 pages of guarantees. And then on the next page, not at the top, not in the middle, all the way at the bottom, there's a single phrase, not a sentence, a phrase, a preposition that will nullify the previous 8 pages. And, and people think, oh, well, with all the other contract terms, they look at the big things, but they don't look at the details. And so, it's like, oh, well, she died penniless, but what's the detail that made it happen? They see the effect, but they don't see the cause. What caused her to become famous and for her to become wealthy was the very positions that she espoused that brought her fame, renown, and wealth.
Right.
Now, the cause and degradation of that wealth has nothing to do with the way that she produced it. Productive capability is the opposite of the erosion of abundance. You get what I'm saying?
Yep, absolutely.
So I mean, the question on its face is not just inconsistent, but it's a little schizophrenic.
Yeah.
And so people who haven't analyzed their thought process, find it quite easy to do that. But like you said, so much of American politics, from what we learned in the past, is this reactionary politics. We're trying to find ways to react or to counteract.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's less about winning and truth, and it's more about making a society that's free and prosperous for the maximum possible number of people.
That's right.
We've got to forget about utilitarianism. We just want people to be happy.
Robin, I'm gonna have to cut you off real quick. I'm starting to get a lot of feedback from you, so I just need you to be quiet for half a second, and that should break your feedback loop. Go ahead.
How about now?
You should be good now.
Yeah, but even Chris Gardner, had Maybe the Pursuit of Happiness. It was all about this hustle. The whole movie was about a hustle. And that's what we should be striving for, is to really, really find a dream and purpose to chase, and to try to make it real. And the stage, is the world, and the audience are our contemporaries. And and it's like he said when he was on trial trying to overthrow the what is it called, the Weimar Republic government in the I forget what that district was in Germany, but Bavaria, I believe it was. He said the court can't really judge me; history will judge me, and that actually is a true statement. You can only judge something by the effects that it has. And so people, who'll say, oh, well, these people were evil, and they did this and this. Well, yeah, they had negative effects, but unemployment in Germany, it was 0. And in the same way, anyone who was a member of the Nation of Islam during the 70s, you think they tolerate unemployment within the ranks of the Nation of Islam? Some motherfucker that's not going to work to further the cause? That's not
Right.
happening. And people say, well, these things are polar opposites than that. The economic underpinning.
Wrong button.
Robin, check and see if you can unmute you've become muted.
Okay, what was the last thing?
There it is.
There you go. You were talking about unemployment in the Nation of Islam.
Oh, I was saying that the Nation of Islam even kind of, mandated this productivity. And so between Nazi Germany and the Nation of Islam, any locality, region, nation, the underpinning of economics that allow people to be prosperous, successful in their endeavors, whether or not good or bad remains across the board. And so, yeah, you can call it evil or enlightenment or whatever, but the question is, are they effective what they set out to do? If you have enough respect for your opponent to analyze their techniques for something that is credible, useful, and actionable, you might learn something that might allow you to defeat your enemy. And so we often get so caught up in reactionary politics of populism nowadays, as it were, that we forget about the basics. It really, really does all boil down to the economy and the ability. And I was explaining to someone yesterday, what is economics? You have uneducated people who will say, oh, it's the study of money. You go to Harvard and Stanford, and they'll say, oh, it's the study of the allocation of scarce resources. And that sounds absolutely, but they don't know what they're fucking talking about either. If you look at a road, you look at a rat, you look at an ant or a kangaroo or a lion, you'll see they spend a great amount of their time hustling, staying their lives. Humans do the same thing, but we have created a world in which we use a medium of exchange to get the resources that are required to sustain our lives. Out of all the animals, the animal that has to pay for the privilege of living here. So economics becomes not the study of money, or simply the allocation of resources which are supposed to be scarce but actually aren't. It's the study of how human life is sustained and how life is affected. And when you understand it in that context, you realize that economics not only, good economics isn't just good politics, but when the laws of economics are as unshifting as the laws that govern physics, the only logical course of action is the course that maximizes wealth output. And a lot of people who are engaged in reactionary politics just don't have the presence of mind to understand that. This creation of wealth is very, very important, no matter how much people demonize it. There is no world in which people want to all be poverty-stricken, starving to death, and suffering from bubonic plague for lack of understanding of how to vaccinate or even have basic sanitation. And all of that leisure that allows people to develop those higher arts is a direct product of having abundance. And abundance only comes from the creation of wealth, security, and yes, a degree of comfort.
Right.
Yeah, but I went off on another tangent, but hopefully it makes sense.
Not
No,
an
it's fine. One of the papers that I've written recently is actually I espoused the assertion that Aristotle's concept of happiness is in fact wealth, not an accumulation of currency as most unschooled minds will consider the idea of wealth, but wealth itself, the accumulation not of exchangeable currency, but the accumulation of all of the product that is necessary to not only survive, but to live comfortably. I've always had a problem with the phrase "you can't buy happiness," because I really, really don't think that you cannot have happiness in poverty. And that whenever I make that assertion, I always get met with somebody talking about, oh, what about Buddhist monks and Nirvana guys and all this stuff? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not poor either.
That's what I was going to say. It's not like they're starving to death.
Well,
I'm not saying that you have to be Donald fucking Trump to be happy, but you're not going to achieve. Oh, excuse me. You are not going to achieve the ends of your pursuit of happiness if you cannot feed and clothe yourself.
No, that's true.
If you're starving and dying in the cold, you're not happy.
It is a sliding bar. It takes less of something to make someone without it happy, which if someone has a little of it and then they want more, it takes having more of it than the person who has none. So there's still a sliding bar to it, but that's a valid point. It doesn't matter what you have. If you're naked and freezing, it's really, really hard to be happy if you're separated from a mansion and Ferraris and airplanes, just as it would be to be separated from a tent and a sleeping bag.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny that, when you, go to Larry Ellison's house, this motherfucker doesn't sleep in the bed. He has, a little Japanese firm mattress thing, and it keeps them in a kind of meditative Zen mode, and he can, encourages him to do sit-ups every morning and whatnot. I think, to a large extent, the misidentification of notional wealth, which you were talking about, that number of dollars with happiness, that both Steve and Chris mentioned, is a function of ignorance. What wealth is like what Chris has now: enough food in the refrigerator, a basement where you can go down and be separated from a beautiful family. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And then the ability to go back up to that family and to have everybody, the wife has her hobbies, and she has a little place where Chris probably doesn't go very often, but she can go and have her little space. The kids have their own space. You get what I'm saying? There's heat, there's air. If somebody for some reason decides they want to be a vegetarian, there's enough space in the refrigerator to put all the various vegetables and the meat.
Not in my house.
On this page, vegetarian is simply an ancient Algonquin Indian word for bad hunter.
Honestly, in my house, if you were to try and store enough raw vegetables to be a vegetarian, well, quite frankly, that's why I have 2 refrigerators. Because I consume, personally, I consume more fresh vegetables than most vegetarians in conjunction with my nearly entirely raw red meat diet.
Hey guys, I don't mean to do this. Robin, it's been great having you here, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to back out for the night. Really glad you decided to join us, and you're welcome anytime as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for having me. I was kind of concerned about my ability to come on. I've been really busy this week, kind of running around, meeting with people, and it's just been kind of a whirlwind since I arrived out west. But yeah, thank you for having me on the show and allowing me to air my views. I'm always very appreciative of people who are, not just like I know some of you have different political philosophies.
Oh yes.
Who are willing to, discuss things in an educated manner. So, for the purpose of, hopefully bettering all of us. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and as far as the differing philosophies, you'll find, Robin, that if you watch the show, those of us that do this show together, there's about 6 of us that rotate in and out. I'm here every week. Steve's here almost every week. I think he's missed 1 episode.
2, I think, but yeah, just about all of them.
But we've got about 6 total hosts that we rotate in and out. Pretty reliably have 3 every week.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll find that between all of us, our views are just dissimilar enough to keep shit really interesting. But I will say that I'm a little reticent to invite an actual liberal on the show, largely because I would just feel bad for him. It'd be kind of like watching Ann Coulter on The View.
Who would be very interesting. I met him in Boston. His name is Peter Bonos. He's a Unitarian Universalist, and he's very well educated. And I mean, sometimes he says things that are preposterous, but I love the way that he puts stuff. It's just fascinating to hear him speak.
Which just goes to show it can be all about delivery.
Yeah, and I love people who put things well. Even if I don't agree with it, I love the thought process of being able to put some shit together and to make it seem, Yeah,
it doesn't sound crazy because it's well spoken.
Yeah.
Man, when we were living in Savannah, we tried to check out the Unitarian Universalist Church because they hosted a lot of the pagan events too. We actually hit the services up there once or twice, and whew, they lost me as soon as they started talking not peace but pacifism. I'm a firm believer that pacifism is the opposite of decency. An absolute adoption of pacifism means that you have just determined that life does not have value adequate to be defended. And that, so as soon as they started down the pacifism piece, I was like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, we gotta go places to be.
As soon as you tell me that my baby girl is not important enough for me to slaughter a village over, you're just wrong. You couldn't be wronger.
But
That's right.
But yeah, I definitely, I explain to people all the time I'm not a pacifist at all. A lot of people, I think.
Oh no, I've seen you hunt men in the woods.
Oh yeah, we did do that. We did do the war games in the woods down in.
I do know you, Rob, and I've shot you before.
Yeah.
Oh crap! You were there.
I'm sorry.
So that I shot
I didn't realize the two of you hadn't put that together already.
That's not where my head was, but now that you mention it, yes.
Well, were you the one that I shot in the neck, and you were like bleeding out of the neck or whatever?
I don't think that was me, but I remember.
No, that was. I want to say that was Patrick.
Yeah, I think so.
We had this war game thing that we were doing, and so like we were like we had teams and we were like hunting each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking crazy, and like this, like everybody thought I was like some kind of, I don't know, punk or softy or something until I started running up on people and shooting them at close range.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was fucking crazy. It was great.
It's like laser tag, but like outside.
Yeah. The only person who really kind of got me consistent, there was this one sniper guy who got me a couple times with Chris. It was so annoying.
Chris, like, send me up to present. He'll recognize the outfit.
He's like a big fat white guy, and you would imagine that it would be easy to hit him, but he would pop up out of nowhere. They train very well in the military. It was very frustrating. So my goal in life is to shoot Chris one day.
We can make it happen.
Here, let me see if I can pop up a picture of me and my rig real quick.
Yeah, I knew mine was how my Google Plus was set, so whenever I mute my camera, that picture comes up.
Oh, that's balling. I gotta get a picture of me with some kind of airsoft or regular rifle or something.
Now come visit. We'll outfit you again.
Yeah, come visit. We'll take you to a fucking range and shoot some real guns. I never get tired of it. I like to say I never get tired of pulling a trigger. Truth of the matter, though, I haven't had time to go do it lately, and it's kind of pissing me off.
Well, get your ass up here and we'll go.
Yeah, you probably should go, Chris, because you don't want your violence to leak out on somebody. You need a release.
Bring that black rifle with you. We'll put some rounds down range.
And I should know Maya K knows Krav Maga.
I don't know Krav Maga. I only took a few lessons. I mean, for several months.
You're like a killer.
No, I'm not. I am.
You took Krav Maga?
Just for a bit, for a few months.
Props.
And then I had to stop because I burned my knee when I ran the half marathon. I really screwed up my knee, so I had to take a break.
Yeah. Well, the nice thing is it builds on what you're gonna react to anyway, so that's hard to forget.
Yeah, and I would like to say that I do feel more confident walking around outside at night. I don't feel as scared as I used to. Mm-hmm. It's really good to give you more confidence in yourself, especially when you're a woman. And
if you can carry yourself like that, especially, goes a long way toward deterrence.
Yeah, of course. No, I can get pretty aggressive. I've had people harass me before, and they regret it.
They regret it. That's great.
Good girl. All right, y'all. Like I said, I've got to back out. I hate to do it, but I hope the two of you can join us again. It's been a very, very good night.
Calling from France.
Yeah.
So, and once again, to thank everybody for watching. We do appreciate it. The views last week were refreshing. We're glad this is getting out there. And remember, we don't necessarily do this to change. There's my boy. We don't necessarily do this to change minds. We do this to let people know there are other people that think like this out there and outspoken about it.
Yeah, I'm definitely pretty outspoken. That's for certain.
Right on. Until next week, guys. Talk to you later.
All right. Good night, brother. Witness. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Brushfire Mind. That's every Friday night. The last two have been at 2200, but every Friday night at 2100. That's 9 o'clock for the rest of you. And what's that? 6 o'clock on your side of the over there on the left coast. So this has been.
I think it's at 9:30 here.
Yeah.
No, it is 9:30 now, but 9 o'clock at night when the show starts on normal Fridays.
Oh yeah.
6 o'clock your time.
At 6 o'clock.
Yeah. So that's every Friday night at 2100. We do the Brushfire Mind live from our various studios scattered across the world. As you can see, we've got a pan-national fucking conference going on here. And going forward, guys, I definitely need you to like this. I need you to subscribe to the channel. I need you to follow us on Twitter, and definitely donate to the Patreon account. And until next time, everybody remember, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, you will keep him warm for the rest of his life.